I realize this moment may not be the most convenient for a heart-to-heart, but I had to wait until you returned to watching YouTube. There was a time subscribing to the channel meant nothing. When the only sign of interest was a like, which was promised to be clicked under the video. When we released Half-Life 2 on the channel, we acted in the face of objections that it was just a video and of no practical use to anyone. We've learned the real attitude towards it now that the sequel was out of the question.
The history of the Half-Life series is deep, interesting, and very multifaceted, almost like the world of Half-Life itself. Many years ago, Valve Studio presented fans of the series with a legendary sequel dedicated to the adventures of the invincible physicist Gordon Freeman. And this sequel has not just become a cult, but has entered the list of the best games of all time. Of course, it was difficult for the developers to surpass such a result, but they tried at least a couple of times and maybe even surpassed it once. How did the episodes of Half-Life 2 turn out? What went wrong in making the sequels? And how did the developers turn the world of video games with Half-Life Alyx around again? That's what we'll tell about in our video today. You're watching PressX. Get comfortable, we're starting. Instead of starting work on a full-fledged sequel to Half-Life 2, Valve changed the philosophy of game release. The company planned to make shorter games in an episodic format, which allowed for more frequent releases, about once every 1 to 2 years. So, the developers decided to create a series of episodic sequels using the Source engine. It's not for nothing that they had been developing a new engine for so long and hadn't released a new game for 6 years. According to game designer Robin Walker, the team had fully mastered their tools and now wanted to benefit from their experience, rather than painfully develop new technologies for a full-fledged new game. Gabe Newell, Valve's president, believed that users would be more excited about a new game released in a shorter time than waiting for years for the next monolithic product in the Half-Life series. In Episode 1, the developers decided to focus on the development of the main characters, particularly Alyx Vance, Gordon's girlfriend and partner, who was supposed to accompany the player throughout almost the entire game. Project manager Robin Walker, in an article announcing the episode for PC Gamer UK magazine, said, "It's kind of ironic that despite so much of the theme of Half-Life 2 being about other characters and other people, you spent most of the game alone." In April 2005, Valve officially announced Episode 1 under the working title Aftermath. The final name of the project, familiar to everyone today, appeared only in February 2006, when Valve decided that Episode 1 would be the first in a trilogy of episodic games to be released over the next 2 years. Gabe Newell generally considered the future trilogy of episodes to be the equivalent of Half-Life 3. He saw this as a kind of completion of Gordon Freeman's story. In the original Half-Life, G-Man turned Freeman into his tool. In Half-Life 2, G-Man used the scientist, and in the episodes, Gordon had to free himself from control. The plot for the future project was written by the already familiar, brilliant Mark Laidlaw. However, if Mark wrote the plots and dialogues exclusively for Half-Life and Half-Life 2, new employees of the company helped him write the plot for the episodes. Screenwriter Chet Falashek and video game writer Alyx Vance. According to Mark Laidlaw, the main plot of the game was as follows. Episode 1 deals with the events and issues set in motion during Half-Life 2. You've done critical damage to the Citadel. The whole place is going to go up, taking out City 17 and what's in its immediate radius. You and Alyx are leading the flight from the city, getting up close and personal with some of the creatures and sights from the end of the game. In general, it should be said that Alyx Vance joined Valve back in 2004 and was supposed to help the team with Half-Life 2, but just at that moment, Alyx was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. He went to talk to the director of the company, Gabe Newell, expecting that his condition would worsen and he would have to leave the company. But Gabe surprised him. The director offered Alyx a long, paid vacation. "Your job is to get better. That is your job description at Valve. So go home to your wife and come back when you are better." Of course, this attitude towards employees in the company is captivating, but Gabe Newell knows what diseases are like no one else. Since childhood, Gabe has suffered from Fuchs dystrophy, a congenital disease affecting the cornea of the eye. With the help of 2 corneal transplants in 2006 and 2007, Gabe managed to cure the disease. Well, Alyx Vance returned to work after his recovery and continues to create Valve projects to this day. After the announcement of Half-Life 2 Episode 1, some publications and users thought that the main character of the game would not be Gordon, but Alyx Vance. This was the case in the expansions to the original Half-Life, each of which had a different playable character. But the developers clarified that the main character of the story would still be Gordon Freeman. This was probably due to the fact that this time, the episodes were an internal development by Valve, and not created by a third-party company like Gearbox Software, as was the case with Half-Life's add-ons. And so, Valve made noticeable changes to Alyx's artificial intelligence to enable her to respond more actively to the player. For example, the companion of the main character commented on the objects that the player manipulated or the obstacles that they overcame. She also acted as an important narrative element, outlining the plot of the game and guiding the player's journey. Alyx often voiced what the player should do next in order to move forward. At the same time, Valve did not want Alyx to interfere with the player. Sometimes the developers shortened her dialogues and lines so that the player wouldn't feel pressured or anxious due to her presence.
I need to get it back to my dad and Dr. Kleiner at the outpost right away. I've been pulling down a copy. Whatever it is, I have a feeling it's bad news for all of us.
Oh, I wish not only Alyx would talk, but also Gordon. Otherwise, these constant comments of hers are still a little annoying. To build a more dramatic story in Episode 1, Valve placed so-called heroic moments throughout the game. Now, when the player alone overcame some obstacles, such as particularly difficult opponents, Alyx took on the role of an outsider and praised the player, admiring them for their feats. This helped bring not only Gordon and Alyx closer together, but also the player and their surroundings. To improve Alyx's artificial intelligence, the developers had to modify the source engine a little. The improved AI of the opponents allowed the soldiers of the Combine to use tactics previously unavailable to them. To crouch when they are being fired at in order to dive under the player's line of fire. In addition to artificial intelligence, the engine was equipped with more advanced lighting effects and a new version of facial expression animation technology. Thanks to this, the graphics in the first and second episodes became a little better. Kelly Bailey was also responsible for the music in the episodes, and in fact, he did not make any special changes to the audio design. The soundtrack is used sparingly in the episodes, mainly during important scenes, major battles, or when encountering a new enemy. For example, the Zombine is the result of the influence of headcrabs on the soldiers of the Combine Patrol. The appearance of zombies in the city proves once again that the Combine lost control of the situation in City 17, after Freeman partially calmed the core of the Citadel. The design of City 17, the Citadel, the White Forest, and other locations in the episodes took up most of the team's time. The developers wanted to reflect the changing shape of the world and remind the player that their actions have a significant impact on the storyline. For this reason, the Citadel has degraded from a cold, alien, and imposing fortress into an extremely unstable state. It gave the player a visual signal of the catastrophic damage they had caused, and highlighted the weakening of the Combine's dominance in City 17. Similarly, the design of City 17 was modified to reflect the effects of the Resistance uprising. Vast swaths of destroyed buildings and enemies who had previously stayed outside the city appeared. Half-Life 2. Episode 2 was developed in parallel with Episode 1 under the strict guidance of David Spirer. Prior to joining Valve, David developed telecommunications software in Boulder, Colorado. At Valve, he began working as a programmer, designer, and leader in the development of various segments of Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 2, Episode 2. For example, it was David who added the first version of the artificial intelligence of Crows and the Hunter to the game, and also worked on the muscle car. And it is worth noting that the schedule for the simultaneous development of the two episodes helped the developers optimize the story between the two parts and create an exciting plot. The technologies used to create both games were the same. This allowed the development teams to quickly fix any technical problems and bugs that might arise in one of the episodes, and this often happened due to the simultaneous release of games on PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. Episode 1 and Episode 2 were received very positively by critics and players. They were praised for their well-designed and more complex gameplay than in Half-Life 2. They noted the progress of Alyx Vance's character and praised the balance maintained throughout the game between puzzle-oriented and action-oriented player tasks. Half-Life 2, Episode 1 even received a nomination at the 10th Annual Interactive Achievement Awards ceremony from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences for the title of First-Person Action Game of the Year. And a logical question arises, what impressed the users so much? Why did critics sing the praises of the episodes? And was there a third episode? It's time to talk about the plot of the Half-Life 2 sequels. Strange images flash before Gordon Freeman's eyes, fragments of the Citadel, the voice of Wallace Breen echoing in his mind, and then, as if telepathically, he is pulled back to the top of the Citadel, to the teleportation tower. Alyx stands next to the scientist, trying to shield herself from the impending explosion, but suddenly, they are surrounded by Vortigaunts who appear out of nowhere. The Vortigaunts speak in their cryptic, guttural tones, chanting prayers, and seemingly take the heroes with them, perhaps into stasis. G-Man had intended to contact Gordon, as he often does, possibly to take the scientist into stasis. However, after witnessing the Vortigaunts' arrival and seeing some microfacial spasms, he changes his mind. The Vortigaunts seem to resist G-Man's influence, and with a cryptic remark, "We'll see," he lets Gordon go. The scene fades, and Gordon wakes up beneath the rubble at the foot of the Citadel. Fortunately, the dog finds him, helping him out of the wreckage. Alyx, overjoyed to see Freeman alive, rushes into his arms. She's already set up a transmitter to communicate with the White Forest, a resistance base located north of City 17. The two heroes attempt to contact Dr. Kleiner and Eli Vance, using the dog as an antenna to boost the signal. Eli, however, is worried sick about his daughter's safety, as she hasn't yet managed to escape City 17. Even more pressing is the fact that the Citadel is about to explode. After some discussion, Dr. Kleiner suggests that Gordon should attempt to sneak back into the Citadel and try to delay the explosion by reprogramming its core. But getting inside the Citadel isn't going to be easy. It's been heavily damaged, littered with debris, and now stands precariously at the edge of a cliff.
Brace yourself, Gordon. Okay, dog, let's do it. Before I change my... Okay. Careful, hold on.
Well, maybe this way. The car continues to plummet through the collapsing floors of the Citadel, but just in time, Gordon and Alyx notice their stop and leap out of the vehicle before it crashes into the debris. Together, they make their way through the Citadel's crumbling interior, heading toward the core control center. As they move, they witness the ongoing collapse of the building's structure, while the stalkers continue their grim tasks, maintaining the computer systems and evacuating important Combine assets from the Citadel. Gordon must fight off the remaining Combine soldiers and eliminate the weak-willed stalkers to prevent further damage to the core. As a result, the heroes manage to slow the core's destructive chain reaction. They soon discover that the Combine soldiers had intentionally destabilized the core, aiming to cause a massive explosion to use its energy to transmit a crucial message to the central world of the Combine. Alyx decides that the message must be sent to the White Forest and copies it for herself. As they progress, they encounter one of the Combine's advisors. Gordon and Alyx quickly learn that the advisors possess formidable telepathic abilities, as one causes bright flashes in their eyes, disorienting them. After acquiring the message, the heroes board an armored train used to transport stalkers. During their journey, the train derails, forcing Gordon and Alyx to navigate through the underground tunnels of City 17. They are greeted by hordes of zombies and antlions, but the two are unfazed, easily pushing forward. Emerging on the surface, they witness the utter devastation of City 17. The Resistance has gained control of the city, and Dr. Isaac Kleiner broadcasts an update from the surviving city screens.
Really tore the hell
Since this is, in fact, the first opportunity we have had to speak openly of the baleful influence of the Combine, there is much ground to cover.
I've never been happier to see
I
Dr.
hope to
Kleiner.
institute a series of useful...
While the Resistance continues to battle the Combine forces and fend off the antlions, Gordon and Alyx make their way through several checkpoints, moving ever closer to the city's exit. Meanwhile, the Citadel's reactor reactivates, signaling that the building's destruction is imminent. After bypassing roadblocks, they meet up with Barney Calhoun and his squad, who are leading the evacuation of the city's civilians. Alyx advises Barney to take the people to the trains, while she and Gordon will act as a diversion. Naturally, Gordon isn't thrilled to take on the role of bait, but he follows through, knowing it's necessary for the escape. The pair fight their way through the ruins of a former hospital, eventually reaching the train station, where they hold off the Combine soldiers long enough for Barney and the others to escape. Alyx then asks Gordon to cover her while she prepares the second train for their own departure. Just as the station is attacked by Combine forces, including the Strider, Gordon is forced to destroy it with an RPG. Fortunately, the new train is ready to go, and Gordon and Alyx board just in time. The Citadel's core finally disintegrates, and its reactor sends powerful pulses toward the Combine world, transmitting the vital message Alyx had uncovered.
Oh my god, the transmission's going out.
As the train speeds away, the Citadel detonates in a massive explosion, obliterating City 17 from the face of the Earth. The screen fades to black, signaling the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 1. It seems like a happy ending, but the questions remain. What happened to the train that Gordon and Alyx were on? What was the Combine's true plan, and what awaited the Resistance forces at the White Forest base? These mysteries are answered in Half-Life 2, the continuation of the story that we'll explore next. After the destruction of City 17, the train carrying Gordon and Alyx flew off the collapsed bridge and dived into the water. Gordon wakes up in one of the carriages and sees Alyx outside the train, along with his gravity gun. Using the gravity gun, Alyx opens the carriage door for him. The heroes move away from the wreckage of the train and see the panorama of the city, or rather, what's left of it. A mysterious vortex of blue energy swirls at the site of the former Citadel, stretching from the sky to the ground. This is an interdimensional portal storm formed during the explosion. The Combine intends to use it to call for reinforcements and crush the Resistance. Periodically, powerful impulses emanate from the portal, rolling across the land in waves that cause severe destruction and trigger mountain collapses. The heroes head to the transmission station at the Victory Mine's 50th anniversary site, where they communicate via video with Alyx Kleiner and Alyx Vance. They report that they've arrived at the White Forest missile complex, and that someone continues to control the disintegration of the core's remnants to convert its energy into a portal beam. During the transmission, Alyx and Gordon are introduced via video link to Dr. Magnuson, a key but eccentric member of the Resistance team. Magnuson's sense of self-importance is palpable, overshadowing his scientific contributions. According to Magnuson, the data Alyx retrieved contains a communication code linked to the Combine's main base. Kleiner and Eli inform the heroes that the data could help them close the portal. Otherwise, if the portal storm isn't stopped in time, the Combine may open a super portal, rendering any resistance futile.
Dad? Dad! You're breaking up! Come in! Dad, are you there? Dad!
Continue surface
no.
sweep. Remote.
Suddenly, the video link is interrupted when the Combine announces the commencement of a mine cleanup operation. Gordon and Alyx are forced to flee the mine. At this moment, a new and terrifying enemy appears. The Hunter, an insanely fast and deadly Combine synth. The Hunter attacks, severely injuring Alyx and causing a concrete slab to collapse onto Gordon. As Gordon loses consciousness, he catches a glimpse of the Hunter standing over Alyx, finishing its assault. Confident its opponents are incapacitated, the Hunter exits. Gordon regains consciousness a while later and sees antlions approaching Alyx. A Vortigaunt arrives in time to fend off the antlions and helps Gordon escape from the rubble. The Vortigaunt explains that Alyx is gravely injured, but can still be saved. With a cry, the Vortigaunt summons his kin, lifts Alyx, and begins leading Gordon toward the Victory Mine, a Vortigaunt stronghold. Gordon enters the mine's elevator, but it malfunctions, sending him plunging downward while Alyx and the Vortigaunt remain on the surface. The Vortigaunt warns Gordon of a new type of antlion, the antlion worker. Beware the acid lions. Their corrosive spray permits quick carving of rock passages, but also serves as a strong deterrent to hive robbers like ourselves. The Vortigaunt eventually carries Alyx to the mine's central chamber, now controlled by the Resistance. Gordon arrives shortly after, as do other Vortigaunts. While the Vortigaunts gather to heal Alyx, Gordon and the rebels fend off waves of antlion attacks. Upon examining Alyx's wounds, the Vortigaunts determine that a larval extract from the depths of the antlion hive is necessary to save her. Gordon and a Vortigaunt embark on the perilous journey to retrieve it. Gordon infiltrates the hive, carefully avoiding the antlion guardian, and retrieves the vital extract. He and the Vortigaunt return to the Victory Mine's central chamber. The extract allows the Vortigaunts to enter a trance, unlocking the full extent of their healing powers to save Alyx. During the treatment, time seems to freeze in Gordon's mind as the G-Man appears. The G-Man reminds Gordon that he personally saved Alyx during the Black Mesa incident. Turning to Alyx, he cryptically instructs her to tell her father, upon their reunion, be prepared for unforeseen consequences. The treatment ends successfully, and Alyx regains consciousness. Though still weak, the Vortigaunts decide to escort her and Gordon to the surface. Their goal is to reach a bridge where they can find a working vehicle. Emerging from the mine, the heroes witness a massive Combine convoy crossing the bridge. The convoy includes soldiers, striders, stormtroopers, and capsules containing advisors.
Oh my god. The Combine's on the move.
Yes, and they carry Shu'ulafai, Advisors still in incubation pods. They gather and unite the scattered
Gordon, Alyx, and the Vortigaunt, who has become close to them, descend into the valley, where they disturb the peace of the antlions. Gordon is forced to fight the antlion guardian, and after subduing the creature, the heroes make their way to the elevator out of the valley. Upon reaching the Combine base, they discover a grisly scene, a mountain of corpses. It turns out that during battles between the Combine and the rebels, the headcrabs had, so to speak, gotten the upper hand over both sides of the conflict. The entire Combine base is now infested with an army of zombies.
Hey, look! Out on that bridge. I think I...
Moving toward the bridge, Alyx discovers a Combine sniper rifle and decides to cover Gordon from an elevated position as he navigates through the Walking Dead to retrieve a high-speed muscle car. When Gordon finds the car, the portal vortex emits another pulse, shifting the bridge's position and making it impossible to cross by car. However, Gordon removes debris from the bridge and carefully balances its structure, allowing them to proceed. Gordon and Alyx bid farewell to their Vortigaunt companion, Alyx with a heartfelt kiss. Why is she kissing him and not me? While Gordon remains characteristically silent, as usual. Climbing into the car, the duo speeds toward the nearest communication station to warn White Grove about the approaching Combine squad. However, they remain relentlessly pursued by persistent hunters. Establishing a video link with Dr. Magnuson, Alyx attempts to inform him about the Combine convoy, but the connection is interrupted by the advisor. Magnuson doesn't appear to understand the gravity of the situation. As usual, the heroes have no choice but to get back in the car and continue their journey to White Forest. Along the way, they pass stunning mountain landscapes, the wreckage of an advisor escape capsule, and a destroyed farm, where it seems a brutal clash between hunters and rebels occurred. As they near the buildings, the characters begin to experience a strange, unsettling mental pressure. Entering one of the structures, Gordon discovers an advisor's stasis capsule, emanating an ominous energy. Alyx resolves to eliminate the advisor before it can cause harm and opens access to the capsule's power supply. Gordon disables the capsule, but this turns out to be a mistake. The advisor isn't dormant. The advisor telepathically grabs Alyx and Gordon, unfurling its long, snake-like tongue. The creature appears ravenous, as if tasting for the first time after a long slumber. The advisor licks the barrel, but it turns out to be unsalted, so he throws it away and begins to taste the rebel's body. What a delicacy.
Oh, God, it's so good.
With his tongue, the advisor reads information from the rebel's brain and plans to repeat his ritual with Gordon and Alyx. However, at the very last moment, the advisor's capsule explodes and causes terrible injuries to him. The creature flies into the air, surrounding itself with fragments of the roof and escapes. Combined soldiers immediately arrive to replace him, but the heroes get in the car and get to the White Forest pretty quickly. When they arrive at the Resistance base, the heroes search for a way to open the gates but are ambushed by the Strider. To their surprise, Dog leaps from the mountains, landing on the Strider and dismantling it piece by piece. Having disassembled the Strider for spare parts, the heroes continue their journey together. With Dog's help, Alyx and Gordon reach the Resistance base, where they are warmly greeted by Alyx Vance. Inside the base, a false alarm frequently triggers, leaving the inhabitants tense and uneasy. After catching up, Eli, Gordon, and Alyx descend to the missile silo, where Dr. Kleiner and Dr. Magnuson are preparing a rocket capable of sealing the portal storm. Magnuson tasks Gordon with investigating the cause of the false alarms, dismissing it as likely just crows. Gordon descends into the missile silo and discovers the alarms were not triggered by crows, but by hunters and the Combine squad infiltrating through a back door into the White Forest. It turns out that the Combine soldiers gain access to the base through the silo hatch, which Gordon must seal. After successfully closing the hatch, Gordon spots an advisor overseeing the attack. Armed with a machine gun, he eliminates the remaining Combine forces, effectively halting the siege of the base. Magnuson finally ceases his incessant shouting over the radio and begins final preparations for the rocket launch. Gordon and Alyx rejoin Dr. Kleiner and Eli, who are reviewing the critical data Alyx retrieved. Kleiner becomes the first to think of watching the recording to the end.
Something else here? It's the Borealis!
Good God.
Incredible!
What?
It turns out that Judith Mossman managed to find the icebreaker Boreas, a vessel linked to Aperture Science, the company that disappeared during a teleportation experiment. Now the heroes have the ship's coordinates and various schematics. Most intriguingly, the ship houses a dangerous teleportation technology. According to Dr. Kleiner, this technology could be used against the Combine, but Eli strongly opposes Isaac's idea. He vividly remembers what happened at Black Mesa and warns Isaac of the potential consequences. Judith Mossman's fate remains uncertain. She may have been captured by the Combine or managed to escape. Alyx convinces her father that Dr. Kleiner is right, insisting that she and Gordon can handle the situation. Gordon, true to form, silently agrees, and the characters shift their focus to the long-awaited rocket launch. During a private conversation with Gordon, Eli confesses that the Cascade resonance was his fault, admitting he should have canceled the test that day. He reveals that their mutual acquaintance, the enigmatic G-Man, brought the massive crystal into Black Mesa and has since been whispering about unforeseen consequences to Alyx. Eli seems on the verge of revealing something even more critical to Gordon, but their discussion is interrupted when Alyx arrives with tea for her father. Meanwhile, a Strider attack on the base is imminent, as a frustrated Dr. Magnuson warns. He briefs Gordon on using his latest invention, the Magnuson device. Of course, it's named after himself. The device is essentially a spike bomb designed to combat Striders. Using a gravity gun, the bomb is hurled at a Strider, where it attaches via spikes, leaving the player to destroy it with conventional firearms. These Magnuson devices are quickly distributed to Rebel outposts through special mini-teleports, and Gordon joins the Rebels to fend off the Striders. After successfully repelling the attack, Gordon returns to the base with the Resistance team and participates in the rocket launch. Freeman is even entrusted with pressing critical buttons, something he hasn't done since the Black Mesa incident. Gordon launches a rocket equipped with a satellite to close the portal in the atmosphere. Alyx and Gordon then prepare to fly via helicopter to locate Judith Mossman and Boreas, whose coordinates they now have. Before their departure, Alyx Vance stops Freeman and begs him not to use the ship's weaponry under any circumstances. Instead, he implores Gordon to destroy Boreas at the first opportunity. Eli expresses pride in Gordon, almost as if he were his own son. As the portal storm dissipates before their eyes, the group heads for the helicopter hangar. At that moment, Dog notices something suspicious beyond the fence and runs off. When the heroes reach the helicopter, two Combine advisors suddenly storm into the hangar, pinning Gordon and Alyx against the wall. Eli tries to strike one of the aliens with a pipe, but only succeeds in enraging the advisor. The creature lifts Eli with its mechanical appendages and, in a horrifying moment, uses its long tongue to pierce the back of his head. The gruesome scene is interrupted by Dog, who rescues the heroes once again. But this time, it's too late.
Dad! Oh, God. Dad! Dad! Dad, please! Dad! Oh my God.
This marks the end of the second episode. The dramatic and tragic conclusion shocked most players and fans of the series. It was both heartbreaking and incredibly intriguing. What awaited the heroes next? Would the icebreaker be found? Could the Combine be stopped? And what about G-Man's cryptic work contract? The community was able to get answers to all these questions already in the third episode, which never came out. The questions remained unanswered. Valve announced Episode 3 in May 2006, with plans to release it in 2007. After the thrilling finale of Episode 2, anticipation for the sequel was immense. Mark Laidlaw, tasked with concluding the story arc of Half-Life 2, understood the weight of responsibility and carefully considered how the narrative should unfold. However, all information about the sequel was tightly guarded until 2011, when rumors began to circulate online that Valve was, to put it mildly, behind schedule with Episode 3. Ultimately, the project was officially canceled shortly thereafter, but let's discuss how it all unfolded in detail. As you know, when announcing the trilogy of episodes, Valve president Gabe Newell stated that he considered this trilogy to be the equivalent of Half-Life 3. Gabe never went back on these words. However, when the third episode failed to release as planned by Christmas 2007, all sorts of theories and rumors began circulating within the community. Instead of the promised third episode, Valve released The Orange Box in October 2007, a collection of 5 Valve games. It included Half-Life 2, its add-ons Episode 1 and Episode 2, the latter having only recently launched, as well as 2 new games, the puzzle game Portal and the multiplayer shooter Team Fortress 2. The collection received excellent reviews, with Portal especially delighting players. Gabe Newell personally stated that Valve intended to continue releasing games via collections. However, this approach was abandoned within the same year, during preparations for the Black Box, which was supposed to include only new games. Nevertheless, the release of a collection featuring Half-Life 2 and just 2 episodes, rather than 3, seemed suspicious, hinting at the possibility that there might never be a third episode. In a later interview, Mark Laidlaw, the screenwriter of the Half-Life series, mentioned that he had planned to conclude the second-part story arc and retire. He envisioned leaving the series to future generations, crafting an open-ended conclusion as he had done in previous installments. An indeterminate space, on hold. So one cliffhanger after another. I expected every installment would end without resolution, forever and ever. In 2009, reports surfaced that Valve was working on incorporating sign language into the game, intending to introduce a character with hearing difficulties. According to Gabe Newell, Alyx Vance had programmed her pet robot, Dog, to use sign language, inspired by a man with hearing impairments with whom she had been in love. However, beyond this, no new details about the series emerged, even though previous installments had been released steadily year after year. In March 2010, Newell spoke about expanding the emotional range of the Half-Life series, even hinting that future games might bring back its terrifying elements. What Gabe referred to at that time would only become clear nearly a decade later, but more on that soon. Despite his comments, the game continued to remain unreleased. A year later, Gabe made another cryptic remark. We went through the episodes phase, and now we're going towards shorter and even shorter cycles. For me, entertainment as a service is a clear distillation of the episodic content model. It's important to note that during this period, Gabe Newell became one of the wealthiest people in the world, with Steam achieving massive global popularity. By 2011, Valve Corporation's valuation ranged from $2 to $4 billion, and its staff had grown from 250 employees at the start of the year to 400 by the end of 2011-2012. In 2012, Forbes ranked Gabe as the 303rd richest person in the US and 854th worldwide, estimating his net worth at $1.5 billion. At this point, Gabe was practically canonized by fans during his lifetime. As a result, Newell increasingly stepped back from hands-on involvement with development teams. In interviews, he often made lofty promises. With Steam facilitating effortless updates and content releases, he envisioned shorter development cycles and a steady stream of additional content for all games, including Half-Life. Yet, the long-awaited continuation of Gordon and Alyx's adventures never materialized. In time, Wired magazine, a prominent US tech publication, published an article describing Half-Life 2, Episode 3 as mere vaporware. This marked a turning point when the community began to seriously worry about the series' fate. There was no official news of development, no announcements about its cancellation, and no updates on whether the project had been shelved. Eventually, despite Gabe's statements, Valve abandoned episodic game development entirely, aiming instead for more ambitious projects. According to level designer Dario Casali, we found ourselves creeping ever forward towards, well, let's just keep putting more and more and more and more stuff in this game because we want to make it as good as we can. And then we realized these episodes are turning more into sequels. By this point, rumors in the community had reached their peak. Nobody understood what was happening with the game. Some claimed the sequel was in active development, citing concept art from 2008. Others speculated that Valve was working toward a full-fledged Half-Life 3. And some pessimists insisted the game had been quietly cancelled and would never see the light of day. Then, the unthinkable happened. In 2016, Mark Laidlaw left Valve. He later explained that he was burnt out from working in the first-person shooter genre and had grown tired of grappling with the narrative challenges inherent to Half-Life. But in fact, he just burned out. He was tired of Half-Life itself and the ideas of the Valve company. He put it bluntly. I always hoped that we'd stumble into a more expansive vocabulary or grammar for storytelling within the FPS medium, one that would let you do more than shoot or push buttons or push crates. In 2017, the news outlet Business Insider labeled Half-Life 2 Episode 3 as the most anticipated game in the world that turned into a farce. Frustrated by the endless speculation, Laidlaw published a short story titled Epistle 3 on August 25, 2017. He described it as a dream he had many years ago. However, eagle-eyed journalists quickly noted parallels between the story's characters and the unresolved plot lines of the Half-Life series. Laidlaw denied this, but journalists interpreted the story as a plot summary for Half-Life 2 Episode 3. For example, one of the characters in the story was named Gordon Freeman, which closely resembled Gordon Freeman. And the plot of the third episode itself could look something like this. Freeman and the Resistance forces travel to the Arctic to board the Borealis, a ship with extra-dimensional technology that allows it to travel chaotically through time and space. Due to this, the characters encounter various alternative versions of themselves from different timelines. The heroes take control of the Borealis and set it on a collision course with the heart of the Combine Empire. At the same time, the ship is set to self-destruct on impact to destroy the Combine's home planet and paralyze their forces. The explosion fails to destroy the Combine or their planet. G-Man kidnaps Alyx, and Gordon is rescued by the Vortigaunts right before the Borealis explodes. They take him to the distant future, where most of the Resistance has perished. And the success of the uprising remains in great doubt.
What?
Of course, it might have been the plot of another cancelled Valve project, the virtual reality game Borealis, which was in development in 2015. Anyway, Mark Laidlaw admitted his mistake only in an interview in 2023. According to him, he was abnormal and completely disconnected from reality at the time of publishing the story. By releasing the story, he created problems for his former colleagues at Valve, which he deeply regrets. There was, however, another cancelled project in the Half-Life series, which is considered to be Episode 4. Despite the fact that there were supposed to be only 3 sequel episodes, Valve entrusted a third-party company with the development of a separate project in the world of Half-Life. Work on it was entrusted to Warren Spector's newly founded company, Junction Point Studios JPS. Evidently, Valve appreciated Warren's breakthrough Deus Ex, and wanted to get something equally creative from him in the Half-Life setting. The 4th episode would have revealed how Revenholm became the city we see in Half-Life 2, teeming with headcrabs and zombies. One of the main characters in it was Father Grigori. This time, the player did not have a gravity gun, but a magnetic cannon that launched projectiles to magnetize metal surfaces and attract objects and enemies to them. The puzzles from the game also did not disappear, and were to be solved using the magnetic cannon. For more than a year, Junction Point Studio worked on the game, even creating a demo of one section and reaching the production checkpoint when the project had enough content to showcase, such as the magnetic cannon. However, in the summer of 2007, Valve lost interest in Junction Point Studio and their project. Then Warren Spector's studio was absorbed by Disney Interactive Studios, and Valve assigned the development of Episode 4 to the French studio Arcane Studios.
Arcane was started in '99 with one mission: to create the special kind of games we're most passionate about. Games with highly crafted, detailed world where gameplay experience focuses on player choice and consequence.
Yes, that Arcane Studios. At the beginning of the 2010s, it was an extremely successful and creative development team that released such masterpieces as Arx Fatalis, Prey, and the Dishonored series. We talked about them in a separate video on our channel dedicated to the immersive sim genre. If you haven't seen it, there is a link in the upper right corner of the screen. By the beginning of 2008, Arcane Studios took over the development and actually turned the project into a separate game unrelated to the trilogy of episodes. It received the working title Ravenholm, and told the story not of Gordon Freeman, but of Adrian Shepard, a Marine from the opposing force squad, whom you may remember from the add-on of the same name, Half-Life. According to the plot, after the events of Half-Life 2, HECU Marine Adrian Shepard is found unconscious by Father Grigori. It is unclear whether G-Man pulled Shepard out of stasis himself or whether the Vortigaunts did it. Grigori is glad to meet a living person and takes his body to his shelter, somewhere in an abandoned city. After regaining consciousness, Adrian awakens with Father Grigori in an abandoned psychiatric hospital. Soon, zombies burst into the room, breaking through Gregory's barricades and traps. The two set out to escape from the city and eventually return to Ravenholm. Shepard helps Grigori turn on the power in the eastern and western sectors of the city. Unfortunately, how and why Grigori left Ravenholm and why he wants to return remain mysteries. However, as the game progresses, Father Grigori experiments on himself with the effects of headcrab poison and mutates. The player struggles to survive using a magnetic cannon and traps created by Grigori. The developers also came up with another innovative weapon, a nail gun that could create paths for conducting electricity and set traps. It reminds me of something. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Valve granted Arcane Studio complete freedom to develop Ravenholm, as they did with Gearbox and the Half-Life add-ons. They only provided developers with feedback and various technical support. Another year passed. The development of the game advanced to a late stage, but unexpectedly for the French developers, Valve canceled the game. The reason for this is not known for sure. Arcane's founder, Rafael Colantonio, believed that Valve found the project too costly. Mark Laidlaw claimed that the idea of the project was creatively limited and not interesting. As a result, the nearly finished game was wrapped up, and what it was like was first shown to fans in 2020 in the documentary No Clip. Later, the documentarians showed a whole hour of Ravenholm gameplay, making it even more painful for fans awaiting any continuation of the Half-Life series. There were new mechanics in the game, like conducting electricity or pushing enemies away with the butt of a weapon. New opponents like Acid Zombie and Zombie Monkey. New music was composed for the project, leaning more toward the metal genre and corresponding to the player's frequent use of electricity. And most importantly, Arcane Studios adhered to the horror atmosphere much more strongly than Junction Point Studios originally did. Ironically, this is why the project was transferred to Arcane. It's just a pity that they were never allowed to finish it. By 2020, the Half-Life community had lost any hope of continuing the series. Valve had seemingly abandoned its brainchild, and the main screenwriter of the franchise had left the company. Even the most dedicated fans agreed that Valve and Gabe can't count to 3, and therefore, it's not worth waiting for anything more from them. Or is it worth it? When the third and fourth episodes of Half-Life 2 were cancelled, Valve took over the development of a new version of its engine, Source 2. Plans for its creation had been circulating within the company as early as 2007, and the first technical demonstration of the engine was completed in 2010. It was supposed to offer improved object physics and provide a more efficient process for content creation. Valve planned for Source 2 to support the Vulkan graphics API and use a new internal physics engine called Rubicon, eliminating the need for third-party Havok tools. Source 2's features were first revealed in 2014, and the engine itself became available to users of Dota 2 in the same year, through the Steam Workshop tools. The engine was later officially announced at the 2015 Game Developers Conference, where Gabe Newell stated that the company's new games would be developed on Source 2. Moreover, the engine was made available for free to game developers, provided their games were published using Steam. And do you remember when level designer Dario Casali revealed that the team had filled the third episode with so much content it grew into a full-fledged game? Around this time, in 2013, the Half-Life development team actually began working on Half-Life 3. They even rescanned the face of Frank Sheldon, whose appearance had inspired the G-Man character in Half-Life 2. However, the question of gameplay came up against the unfinished Source 2 engine. Valve did not want to release a new game on the old engine. They planned to use procedural level generation in Half-Life 3, enabling the game to generate different routes of progress through the environment during each playthrough. Since the Source 2 engine was still incomplete, the project was cancelled at an early stage of development. Once Source 2 was finished in 2016, the studio returned to creating a new game in the Half-Life universe. This project entered production with the largest development team in Valve's history. Something brilliant was once again waiting for the world.
Sort of like, the line in John Wick, where everybody keeps asking me if I'm back, and it's like, yeah, I guess Half-Life's back, so it's great.
As we have already said, Gabe Newell always aims to surprise users, set new trends, and change the industry with his innovative products. The creation of the Source 2 engine gave Valve developers unprecedented creative freedom. And Gabe turned his attention to a less popular field of computer games, virtual reality. Valve's first step in this direction was The Lab, a collection of 6 mini-games in virtual space released in 2016. The second step in this direction was developing their own VR headset, which had long been a dream of Gabe's. To this end, Valve entered into a partnership with the HTC Electronics company and began working on a device called the Valve Index. The final step in their virtual reality initiative was creating a full-fledged AAA project. Recognizing the potential of a major VR game, the developers began working on prototypes, drawing from their intellectual property, including the Portal series. By 2017, 3 VR projects were in development. However, the developers discovered that the Portal puzzles disoriented players in virtual reality. In contrast, the Half-Life universe was perfect. Few other Valve games offered the same potential for seamlessly integrating player interaction with the environment. VR was an exciting opportunity to revisit the series, but the developers felt immense responsibility to the fans they had let down with the cancellation of Half-Life 3. Furthermore, if Half-Life 3 were a VR-only game, not everyone would be able to play it, likely causing an even greater wave of negativity. So, they deliberated and decided, we need to create a prequel. Interestingly, the resulting project would become a prequel reboot sequel, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. At the beginning of 2017, the development team for Half-Life, Alyx, the name given to the new project, included 80 people. In April 2018, Valve acquired the developer company Campo Santo Productions, known for the adventure game Firewatch. New members of the Valve team joined the work on the Half-Life prequel. Considering that Valve had repeatedly failed to complete projects recently, some employees were hesitant to join the development of Half-Life Alyx. Additionally, many were skeptical about VR itself, questioning its direction and potential.
What is this?
Then, at the end of 2018, Valve conducted a company-wide test of the game, and its results convinced everyone that making a game for VR was the right decision. The development of Half-Life Alyx was now in full swing. To write the story, Valve brought back screenwriters Eric Walpow and Jay Pinkerton, who had previously quit following the departure of Mark Laidlaw. Initially, they declined to rejoin the project, so Valve hired Rob Yescombe, known for his work on the VR game The Invisible Hours, to write the script. Rob wrote a dark and terrifying story with gruesome scenes, at times scarier than anything previously seen in the Half-Life series. Feedback on the project after the company-wide testing in 2018 was positive in every aspect except the plot. Here, Valve faced a dilemma because they had initially planned to release Half-Life Alyx alongside their VR headset, the Valve Index, in June 2019. Releasing a game with exciting gameplay, intricate level design, an impressive soundtrack, and stunning graphics, but with a poorly received plot, was deemed unacceptable. Valve made the only right decision, to postpone the release of Half-Life Alyx and revise its plot. Eric Walpow and Jay Pinkerton returned to assist the team. They rewrote the dialogues and the main plot while preserving the gameplay, working alongside screenwriters from Campo Santo, Jake Rodkin, and Sean Vanneman. The screenwriters concluded that the prequel setting inherently reduced tension because the survival of the main characters was already known to players. Secondly, the story of the prequel did not significantly impact the overall Half-Life narrative, and the authors didn't want it to feel like a hermetically sealed short story within the Half-Life universe. Furthermore, the game was intended to culminate in a meeting with the powerful G-Man, who gave Alyx something for his release. But when asked, what exactly, the screenwriters themselves couldn't answer. Most importantly, the team wanted the game's finale to carry significant weight in the story and resolve the uncertainties that had kept fans in suspense since Episode 2. To mitigate the motion sickness problem common with virtual reality helmets, Valve implemented several movement options. For example, they drew on the experience of the 2018 VR game Budget Cuts, which used teleportation to move players between locations. Although teleportation may seem awkward when observed externally, the developers found that players adapted to it quickly. Later, Valve further refined the controls before release, drawing inspiration from the VR shooter Boneworks, and added the ability to move naturally without abrupt jumps. To discourage players from rushing through levels via teleportation, the developers filled the game areas with interactive elements that captured attention and slowed players down. For example, here's a threat in the form of a barnacle. There's a collector's item, there's a beautiful location, and there's even a board and markers. Incidentally, in the story, America no longer exists.
What the fuck is this?
Another important gameplay feature that Valve successfully implemented was standardizing player height. Taller players typically had to crouch to navigate certain spaces, but Valve ensured that the virtual height of all players remained the same when teleporting. This adjustment went unnoticed by players, as they were focused on progressing toward their goals. The developers also had to create a combat system from scratch because the game did not allow players to aim at opponents using a mouse. Each weapon in the game is designed to be used with one hand, leaving the other free to interact with the real world. The iconic crowbar had to be omitted because Valve was unable to make hand-to-hand combat work effectively in virtual reality. Moreover, players could accidentally snag objects in the game's space with the crowbar. Besides, the crowbar is synonymous with Gordon Freeman. The developers wanted Alyx to be portrayed as a hacker and jack-of-all-trades. For this reason, Alyx's main weapon in the game is a multi-tool, a device assembled from a compact cassette and various electrical parts wrapped in gray duct tape. This tool allows Alyx to manipulate electrical circuits, hack fabricators, access the Combine command panels, unlock lockers, disarm laser traps, and bypass armored doors. Another essential gadget is the gravity gloves, or Russells as they're called. The gloves allow Alyx to pull objects toward her, even drawing Vortigaunt energy from capsules in the Combine storage. Additionally, the left glove features a flashlight. It's interesting that the gloves also include indicators that display the player's health, resin, and weapon ammunition. Each hand also has a pocket for storing one useful item, effectively replacing the traditional game interface, HUD, from previous installments. It also became evident that VR players moved at a slower, more realistic pace compared to players in conventional first-person shooters. As a result, Valve had to redesign the enemies to ensure battles remained fair and engaging. For instance, the antlions from Half-Life 2 were slowed down because their original high-speed overwhelmed players. The developers also added the ability to shoot off their legs, allowing players to slow them down themselves. Fast zombies and fast headcrabs were removed entirely for the same reason. In addition, their appearance in VR was overwhelmingly frightening. According to designer Dario Casali, the shock of having them come around the corner and latch onto you before you'd even know what was going on was just too much. Valve carefully analyzed and refined every element related to the player's reaction to in-game events and environments. It was crucial for the developers to ensure that these reactions wouldn't be overwhelming for VR users. According to Gabe, this meticulous attention to detail is what Valve has perfected over its many years of video game development.
Want to go down the rabbit hole
for a few minutes? Okay. Why not? I mean, we don't get to talk to you very often. So
reading and writing,
you're clearly passionate about
reading and writing to somebody's motor cortex is much more of a tractable problem than making people feel cold. And you never would have guessed that.
To voice and act out the characters, Valve invited a mix of familiar and new actors. Merle Dandridge was the first to return to the role of Alyx Vance. Although she successfully recorded her lines, playtests revealed that her voice didn't suit Alyx's younger age in Half-Life Alyx, 19 years old compared to her older portrayal in Half-Life 2. In September 2019, American actress Ozioma Akaga, also known for her role as Juliana in Deathloop, was approved for the role of the main character. James Moses Black was cast as Eli Vance, taking over for Robert Guillaume, who passed away in 2017. Guillaume, who was already 89 at the time, likely would not have been able to return to the role regardless. Meanwhile, Rhys Darby, a New Zealand actor and comedian known for his high-energy comedy routines, was cast as Alyx's assistant, Russell. Darby brought a touch of humor to the game with a few comedic moments. Among the returning actors were Tony Todd as the alien Vortigaunt, Mike Shapiro as G-Man, and Ellen McLean as the voice of the Combine's radio broadcasts. Shapiro became so immersed in his role as G-Man that he recorded all his lines in a single 20-minute session. Additionally, screenwriter Sean Vanneman recommended hiring two actors he had worked with previously at Campo Santo, renowned voice actress Cissy Jones for the role of Olga, and American actor Rich Sommer, who voiced Larry, Drone Russell, and Combine soldiers. For the first time, Alyx Vance spoke as the game's protagonist rather than a supporting character. This further reinforced the fan theory that Gordon Freeman is mute. All right, jokes aside. It's just that, during the creation of Half-Life Alyx, the developers finally considered giving the main character voice lines. The writers discovered that Alyx's ability to speak enriched the narrative, adding layers of emotion and personality. To complement this, they added radio dialogue between Alyx and Russell to periodically lift the player's mood and maintain engagement.
Oh, do you need a minute? Because, I could pause the feed.
Since we're on the topic of the game's sound, it's worth mentioning an unexpected challenge tied to the soundtrack. Sound design is typically completed late in development, once the game is nearly finished. However, no one could have predicted the outbreak of a global pandemic. The final weeks of Half-Life Alyx's development occurred remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Gabe Newell was actually on vacation in New Zealand when it all started, and was glad to stay there for a few more years. It's anything, but New Zealand is really very far from the Valve office. Newell even applied for permission to have permanent residence in New Zealand in October 2020, but after a couple of months he still returned to his native Seattle. Despite the remote work and the challenges posed by the pandemic, the sound and music in Half-Life Alyx turned out phenomenal. Canadian composer Kelly Bailey, well known from previous parts of the Half-Life series, worked on the game's soundtrack. He collaborated with another Valve composer, Mike Moraski, who had previously scored games like Team Fortress 2, Portal, and the Left 4 Dead series. Earlier in his career, Moraski had also worked as a senior visual effects artist and technical director on the Lord of the Rings and the Matrix trilogies, but that's another story. To shape the musical style, Kelly shared examples of industrial music from Nine Inch Nails, The Prodigy, and the Canadian electro-industrial band Skinny Puppy, and together they wrote something like this. And this? Or, for example, even this. In short, the musical accompaniment in Half-Life Alyx was multifaceted and worked perfectly for the atmosphere of the changing young Alyx, City 17. The world of Half-Life became even more immersive, even more realistic, even deeper, and even sadder. And by the way, what was City 17 like and what adventures awaited Alyx Vance? Let's briefly walk through the plot of Half-Life Alyx. The game takes place after the 7-Hour War, 5 years before the arrival of Dr. Gordon Freeman in City 17. The memories of the city's residents of their defeat in the 7-Hour War remain vivid. In the shadow of an unfinished Citadel, civilians are learning to live under the rule of invaders. Among these few survivors are two of Earth's most inventive scientists, Dr. Alyx Vance and his friend Russell, who are the founders of the nascent resistance. Eli is assisted by his daughter, Alyx. Alyx and Alyx Vance, like many of the city's other residents, are immigrants to City 17. Years later, Eli continues his underground scientific activities and conducts crucial research, while Alyx creates important tools for those residents prepared to challenge the Combine. She observes striders connecting power cables to the Citadel and military helicopters delivering metal components to the tower. The heroine anxiously awaits news from her father, who's on an important mission. According to their joint plan, they must steal the Combine's mini-reactor and deliver it to eastern Black Mesa. Eli contacts his daughter to inform her that he and Russell have successfully stolen Pylon 7B of the Citadel's energy column. Additionally, they have hacked the Combine's network. However, the connection is cut off, and Alyx is forced to go to Eli's secret hideout. Upon entering the house, she and her father are seized by representatives of the Civil Protection who are attempting to suppress the resistance. Alyx is thrown into a Combine vehicle and driven to an unknown destination, but her father's and her mutual friend Russell intervenes, putting a wrench in the Combine's plans. Russell helps the heroine escape, and she sets out to rescue her father, who was taken in a different vehicle. Along the way, she learns that the Combine is supplying resources to the quarantine zone, a part of the city closed to the public, overrun by the flora and fauna of Xen. To prevent the spread of biomass that arrived on Earth through portal storms caused by Cascade resonance, the Combine has blocked the quarantine zone with a walking wall. Yes, the same Cascade resonance caused by that giant G-Man crystal. Russell discovers that Eli is being taken to Nova Prospect Prison for interrogation and suggests that Alyx intercept him in the quarantine zone. Alyx attempts to reach the area by train, but the train doesn't make it. She's forced to travel on foot through abandoned subway stations, sewers, and railway tracks, all of which are guarded by zombies and Combine soldiers. While navigating the drained water utility, Alyx discovers a large mural depicting the history of the Vortigaunts up to the destruction of the Citadel. Soon, Alyx encounters a Vortigaunt, who promises to help her save her father, but requests that she free his relatives from the Combine's captivity. Without his kin, the Vortigaunt cannot access the collective consciousness known as the Vortessence. The creature, already aware of Alyx's and Eli's futures, tells her to look for the North Star. Taking this advice, Alyx continues her journey, occasionally finding alien resin from the Combine, which she uses to upgrade her weapons at modification stations. After overcoming numerous enemies, including heavily armed Combine special forces, Alyx attempts to hack a train control panel at the station. When the panel fails, she pulls the emergency stop lever to switch the tracks. The train derails and overturns, proving why the stop lever is emergency. In the wreckage, Alyx searches for her father and encounters dead Combine advisors, about whom little is known. She eventually finds Eli precariously hanging over an abyss on a metal plate, which gives way before her eyes. However, a Vortigaunt suddenly appears and saves Eli, literally pulling him out of the abyss. Eli reveals that he has obtained information about a Combine bunker in the quarantine zone containing a secret superweapon. Determined to use the superweapon against the Combine, Alyx sets out to find it. Upon arrival, she discovers that the Combine bunker is actually a massive flying fortress known as the Vault. The structure hovers in the air, powered by green energy transmitted through thick cables from giant power units. Here, Alyx also finds the North Star that the Vortigaunt mentioned, a hotel housing one of the bunker's power stations. As Alyx moves through the hotel, she encounters a new type of headcrab, the Reviver headcrab. These creatures have flattened, pale blue bodies with glowing blue spots and can resuscitate corpses. Generally timid, they flee from large enemies, releasing a dark, lightning-sparked cloud. However, they are also capable of spitting electrified liquid. Alyx reaches the command post of the North Star power station and disconnects the cables feeding the bunker. In doing so, she discovers that the Combine's energy source is a captive Vortigaunt. After freeing the Vortigaunt, he promises that his kin will destroy the remaining power plants. Alyx proceeds to the bunker to retrieve the superweapon. After passing through the processing plant, she reaches the Golden Lion Distillery, a pre-war facility once known for producing Golden Lion vodka, whiskey, and gin. Russell's dream come true. Inside the factory, Alyx meets Larry, a man who has survived the dangers of the quarantine zone. Larry introduces her to Jeff, a mutated and extremely dangerous blind creature. Once part of the pollution control team, Jeff was transformed by Zen spores. Now, he navigates using sound. Larry explains that Jeff reacts to noise, and Alyx cleverly uses vodka bottles to distract him. She eventually lures Jeff into a garbage press. After disposing of Jeff, she uncovers a massive trapdoor set up by the Combine to contain ant lions. Opening the hatch, Alyx descends into the central zoo, an abandoned, eerie remnant of its former self. And while Alyx is fighting the local wildlife, Eli contacts her and warns his daughter that the vault is not a superweapon, but a prison built to contain something discovered by the Combine, something that even the Combine itself fears. As Alyx approaches the bunker, she sees the Vortigaunts disconnect the last power cable of the structure. At that moment, the giant building begins to fall, but the Combine has prepared for such an event with an emergency power cut. The bunker activates a force field projector to stabilize itself. Alyx fights her way into the building housing the projector, climbs to the 4th floor, and accidentally overhears a conversation between a mysterious woman and an advisor. The woman argues with the advisor, even laughing at him, and claims to be her own boss.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
She then persuades the advisor to expedite the vault's relocation, expressing amazement at the Combine's sluggishness. Eli Vance concludes that Gordon Freeman is imprisoned in the vault, and both Russell and Alyx agree with him. They're thrilled at the prospect of meeting such a great man, the one who defeated Nihilanth with just a crowbar, or they think so. Alyx reaches the storage control center where she finds a tractor beam and a command panel to move the bridge to the storage area. However, a security door seals the exit from the room, leaving her no choice but to randomly pull levers in hopes of activating the bridge. After several failed attempts, the levers are blocked, and an unknown object forms near the bunker, pulling everything around it into itself. Over time, the object dissolves and the structure collapses rapidly to the ground, stunning Alyx with an explosive wave. The heroine survives and miraculously finds herself lifted into the vault by a tractor beam. Eli tries to warn his daughter against entering, but it's too late. Inside, Alyx discovers an apartment building where the prisoner is held. The prison consists of Combine outbuildings that house guards and the icosahedral cage containing the prisoner. The prisoner's cage is covered with external protection made of special glass. The cage is supported by rods that transmit external energy, a type of chant energy, used to restrain the prisoner. As Alyx approaches, numerous anomalies occur, caused by the uncontrolled leakage of Vortigaunt energy and the prisoner's growing influence due to the vault's collapse. The energy randomly distributes throughout the building, altering its gravitational properties. Some rooms contain projections of a man from the past, unknown to Alyx, dressed in a simple gray suit. As Alyx gets closer to the prisoner, the distortion intensifies. Spaces become mirrored and fragmented. In the vault's technical area, she encounters Combine soldiers guarding the prison. At this point, when it seems Alyx is doomed, unarmed, and outnumbered, her gloves suddenly begin absorbing clumps of green Vortigaunt energy. Alyx, as if she were a natural inhabitant of Zen, releases green energy rays from her hands, and spectacularly fights her way to the prisoner. However, instead of finding Freeman inside the prison, she frees G-Man. As usual, the enigmatic figure speaks in riddles, vaguely explaining the supernatural abilities of his employers. In gratitude for his release, G-Man offers Alyx his services. She asks him to remove the Combine forces from Earth, but G-Man declines, stating it's not in his employer's interests. Instead, he shows Alyx a vision set 5 years in the future. Her father's death at the hands of a Combine advisor at the White Forest Missile Complex. Alyx agrees to G-Man's offer, using green energy to shoot the advisor and save her father. Satisfied, G-Man tells Alyx she has proven herself worthy of replacing his former employee, Freeman, whom he finds disappointing. He offers her further work, and as he departs, he places Alyx in stasis. Meanwhile, far away at White Forest, Gordon Freeman stands before a dead advisor and a living Alyx Vance. But Alyx is missing, and Eli realizes who has taken her. Handing Gordon a crowbar, Eli prepares for a new adventure alongside Freeman. This moment marks the previously unannounced Valve reboot and sequel to Half-Life Episode 2. This was the plot of the Half-Life 2 prequel, which took many fans by surprise. Valve once again amazed its audience, delivering an unforgettable story that felt both new and familiar. What was the community's reaction? Much like during the delay of Half-Life 2's release, Gabe Newell once again invited fans to write to him directly via email. And with the release of Half-Life Alyx, Gabe kindly reminded fans of his email address just to chat.
By the way, my email is gaben@valvesoftware.com. So please let me know after you have a chance to play the game.
Gabe loves email. Now let's look at how the release of Half-Life Alyx unfolded and determine whether Valve will continue the series. Of course, we hope so. But before we move on to the final part of our video, remember that you can subscribe to our channel. We pour effort into each new video and carefully read your comments, so feel free to share your thoughts about this video and our channel. Your engagement helps PressX grow. If you enjoy what we do, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on new videos and important news in the gaming world. We promise, no spam. That's it. Let's continue. The finale of Half-Life. Alyx actually rewrote the original well-known ending of Episode 2. For some, this was confusing. Others were angry at Valve, while some felt it restored their faith in the developers and gave hope for the series' continuation. The community saw that Valve hadn't forgotten about the franchise, meaning it's not over yet. Yes, the Half-Life universe now has 2 alternate realities. The final chapter of Half-Life, Alyx strongly hinted at this, with its mirrored space in front of the player. Considering that the game's first chapter is titled Entanglement, it's clear the authors had the concept of an alternate timeline planned well in advance. For most players, the release of Half-Life 1. Alyx was a pleasant surprise. Valve announced the game in November 2019, deliberately waiting until development was nearly complete. The team reflected on its previous release experiences and, before announcing Half-Life, Alyx worked to avoid the production delays that plagued earlier projects. During the first 24 hours after the game's trailer was released, it garnered more than 10 million views. Valve understood that players who had waited years for a new Half-Life game might be disappointed that it was a virtual reality title. For this reason, the company carefully controlled its announcement. As part of the Half-Life Alyx promo campaign, Valve made the earlier games in the series free on Steam from January to March 2020, just before the prequel's release. Originally, Valve planned to showcase Alyx at the December 2019 Game Awards, but canceled the demonstration a few hours before the event. The company later explained that it was working hard on the game. In reality, just before the Game Awards, another VR game, Boneworks, had been released, showcasing impressive player movement mechanics. Valve decided to refine Alyx's movement before showing it to the public. The release of Half-Life. Alyx was also influenced by the launch of the Valve Index in June 2019. Initially, Valve's virtual reality headset raised more questions than it did sales. During the summer and early autumn, only 46,000 devices were sold. However, after the announcement of Half-Life Alyx in November, sales skyrocketed. The Valve Index headset, along with its controllers and base stations, sold out in the United States, Canada, and Europe within a week of the announcement. In the last 2 months of 2019, 103,000 devices were sold, all because Valve announced that Index users would receive Alyx for free.
What do I owe you? Nothing. It's for free. Free!
This sudden and sharp demand for VR devices caused a global shortage. By January 2020, the Valve Index was sold out in all countries except Japan. The COVID-19 pandemic further complicated the situation, significantly slowing production and supply chains. By the time the game was released, Valve had almost no Index headsets left to sell. Despite this, at the end of 2019, only 6.67% of VR devices connected to Steam were Valve's headset. Today, that figure has risen to nearly 20%. On March 2nd, 2020, Valve released several gameplay videos for Half-Life: Alyx. On the same day, the store began offering merchandise based on the game's universe. On March 5th, 2 locations from the game, City 17 Lanes and Russell's Laboratory, became available to all Valve Index users. These could be explored in detail through the Steam VR Home application. On March 20th, 3 days before the game's release, pre-downloads became available on Steam for all who had pre-ordered. Half-Life: Alyx was released on March 23, 2020, and as promised, it was free for Valve Index owners. Later, on May 15th, the game was made available on the Linux platform. According to designer David Spearer, this is just the beginning of a bright future for the Half-Life franchise. Valve has plans for a sequel but is waiting to gauge the community's reaction to Alyx. The developers view Half-Life: Alyx as a return to this fantastic universe, not its conclusion, and the community's reaction was overwhelmingly positive. According to the review aggregator Metacritic, Half-Life: Alyx received universal acclaim. By April 2020, it had entered the top 20 most highly rated PC games with a score of 93 out of 100. The game was hailed as a killer app for virtual reality. Kevin Webb of Business Insider noted, "Alyx could spark fresh interest in an industry, VR, that has struggled to win over hardcore gamers." Various awards cemented the game's success. Half-Life: Alyx won Easy Ally's 2020 awards for World's Best Design and Game of the Year. It was also named Game of the Year at the VR Awards 2020. The game was nominated at the Game Awards 2020 in categories such as Best Game Production, Best Audio Design, and Best Action, and won in the Best VR AR category. And this was only the beginning of its accolades. At the 17th British Academy Games Awards, Half-Life: Alyx was nominated for Best Game, Game Production, Sound Achievement, and Artistic Achievement. At the 24th Annual DICE Awards, it won in categories such as Action Game of the Year, Outstanding Achievement in Game Production, and Outstanding Achievement in Game Design. It also received awards for Technical Achievement in Immersive Reality and Game of the Year in Immersive Reality. It is quite difficult to estimate the total sales of the game today. At the time of release, Valve knew that many people would not play Alyx immediately, and was well aware that the game's audience at that time was relatively small. When asked about the game's profitability, Gabe Newell described it as a promising investment in long-term technology. The company is not trying to make money directly from Half-Life: Alyx. Instead, it invests in developing its products, VR technologies, and the gaming industry as a whole. In simpler terms, they are doing exactly what they did 25 years ago. It has been a long time since the release of the prequel Half-Life 2, but Valve is in no hurry to announce a sequel. In numerous interviews after Alyx was released, Gabe and other developers stated that they had officially returned to the Half-Life universe. They jumped back into it with both feet, so to speak, and promised to continue pleasing fans. However, as time goes on, there has been no further news from Valve. Of course, Valve has always been notoriously secretive. As the saying goes, watch their hands closely. If they are developing VR devices, it is likely for a specific purpose. Nothing at Valve happens without reason. This has left the community in suspense, closely monitoring Gabe and the company for any signs of activity. In this atmosphere of anticipation, fans finally received a tantalizing leak. Information surfaced in the portfolio of voice actress Natasha Chandel, revealing that she had worked on a Valve project with the working title White Sands. Interestingly, this name refers to the national park in New Mexico, where the Black Mesa research complex from the original Half-Life was located.
Within the sprawling expanse of gypsum sand dunes and dry lake beds in New Mexico's White Sands National Park, researchers have spent years examining.
Shortly thereafter, a well-known data miner and Valve insider, Tyler McVicker, discovered additional information. While digging through the files of Valve's upcoming multiplayer game, Deadlock, McVicker unearthed details about a mysterious project allegedly in active development. This project, codenamed HLX, was found within the game files. While it is impossible to confirm whether this game will be Half-Life 3, it strongly suggests a continuation of the series. The game has reportedly been in development since 2021, with a plot that picks up where Half-Life: Alyx left off. According to the files, Gordon Freeman will once again be the protagonist, as evidenced by mentions of the HEV protective suit. The new installment's story will be linear, unfolding across large, detailed locations. It will not feature a full open world, but will be a single-player experience reminiscent of the earlier games. At the same time, McVicker claims the project will not be a VR-exclusive title. Instead, it will return to a traditional format, making it accessible to a broader audience, just like in the good old days. It seems the world of Half-Life never truly stands still. Quietly but steadily, it evolves to surprise players time and again. We'll never know what stage of development Half-Life 3 is in until it unexpectedly drops, stunning both old fans and a new generation of players. For this persistent desire to innovate and surprise, we love Gabe Newell and Valve. Half-Life 2 is enshrined as a classic in the Museum of Video Games. The episodes expanded its emotional range, delivering unforgettable moments, from joy and love to fear and heartbreak. They were bundled together in the orange box, yet subsequent planned episodes were cancelled during development. For years, Valve teased Half-Life 3, only to shock the world by releasing Half-Life: Alyx. We cherish this universe and wish for Valve and Gabe Newell to continue breaking boundaries, shaping the future into today's reality. What will Valve's next project in the Half-Life universe be? Will it be a full-fledged third part or another prequel? Will the game run on the same engine, or will Valve develop a new one? And will the new Half-Life be playable on the Steam Deck, Valve's handheld console?
I don't know if they're going to work with just one arm, but well, let me know what you think. My email's gayben@valvesoftware.com.
Yes, sir.
So I'd love to hear what you like, what you don't like.
All right.
Even if you emailed all these questions to Gabe, they would likely remain unanswered for now, but we'll revisit them someday when the Half-Life series finally receives the long-awaited sequel. That will be a different story, one we'll tell in a future video. For now, our very short video has come to an end. Thank you for watching it all the way through. Don't forget to like it and share your thoughts in the comments, perhaps on which game series you'd like us to cover next. We also recommend checking out other videos on our channel, or simply clicking on one of the suggestions now appearing on your screen. As always, it was PressX. See you soon.